What the fuck is up, world? Piali, Tlaltic back. We back in this bitch. Another podcast for that ass. Another Grito. Sea dicho. Coming a very long time since my last podcast. And I'm okay with that. Because your boy's been low riding through Turtle Island, right? It's the Nahuatl in me, dog. What can I say? All right. Curled up like the serpent, just ready to rejuvenate, ready to continue along my journey through this fucking mystery on this slippery earth of Tlaltic, right? And in that process, I've kind of just been laying low in the cut and just observing, homie, and looking forward to being back up in this bitch and sharing some of the insights that came to me, I should state, by way of that observation process, right? So let's just get into it, dog. Before I get into it, actually, first and foremost, big shout out to anybody that's actually still listening to this. I understand the way the podcast game works as somebody who is a avid enjoyer of podcasts myself. So if you're even listening to this after however X amount of months it's been since the last episode, just know that I really appreciate the fuck out of it, homie. Second of all, big shout outs to, in particular, I had for the first time a student in my class who takes the class because of this podcast, right? So this actually meant a lot to me. Shout out to you. Okay, you know who you are. No need to say the name. Generally speaking, I've had students that were like students of mine that go on to find the podcast, but to have someone become a student of mine because of the podcast, like, I really appreciate that. It's the nicest way to say it, right? And yeah, so I guess let's just go ahead and get into it, dog. I want to just get right into it, homie, because a lot of I have a lot to cover that I want to cover. At least I'm going to try to get through as much of it as I can, but I'm not going to force it. I'm not going to rush it. It's been a long time, you know what I mean? I got a lot of thoughts that I'd like to share, but at the same time, I don't want to bludgeon you with an overabundance of information in the first one back. You know what I'm saying? But perhaps one of the most important things that I did want to discuss is why, dog? Like, why is it that I've been out of the game for so long? And it's always a culmination of factors. You know what I mean? If you followed along this podcast long enough, you know the majority of them. Like, those are always going to be there. My brother is going to be dead for the rest of my life. You know what I mean? That's always going to be an issue that haunts me. But on top of that, dog, real shit, what's been really keeping me from jumping back on this bitch is I'm just starting to learn my place, not just in this podcast game, but also within my ancestral tradition of philosophy that I am, you know, continuing to immerse myself into rather, as the weeks go by. The more and more I study this ancestral ways, dog, the more and more I polish my stone and recall the knowledge that's inherent within us. You know what I mean? The more I realize how much of this podcast originally was, I'm trying to be the best way that I could state this. And I guess, it just wasn't original. And that's a great thing. It's a great thing, right? It wasn't original because, and it's not just this podcast, dog. It's my whole hood philosophy shit, bro. You know, just a quick reiteration. Hood philosophy was, and always will be concerned with shit like mental health, working on our subconscious thoughts, battling our addiction, relapse, recovery. You know what I mean? Or recovery, addiction, recovery, relapse, I should state, right? And it's just in immersing myself, you know, and becoming more resolute, I should state, in the face of the struggle with that, you know, tripartite, to use the language that I'm going to introduce later, struggle of, you know, addiction, recovery, relapse, you know, becoming more resolute and stronger, if you will, in the face of that struggle. Like, that's been a key tenet of hood philosophy. And it's also a key tenet of the ancestral Nahuatl philosophy, dog, right? This entire time, homie, I thought I was unique in that. But it turns out that realistically, all I ever was doing was just simply hearkening back to some ancestral teachings that were being activated in my DNA in response to the external stimuli and situations that I had found myself in, right? And honestly, at first, initially, I guess, and this is not the first time this has happened to me, and I'm not unique in this. There's, you know, a whole running joke in the field of philosophy where people make these grand insights only to find out that someone published it like 200 years before. You know what I'm saying? But for me personally, and the inherent disappointment with that, like, fuck, I thought I was going to be the one to bring this up, but nah, you know what I mean? Someone beat me to the punch 200 years ago. And while there was like a brief like instance of that, I'm not going to front, you know what I mean? It was quickly replaced with a sense of just appreciation, I guess, a sense of belonging, a sense of finding my way home, I guess is perhaps the best way to put it, because it kind of validated in a lot of ways, not just the philosophy that I was, discussing, this hood philosophy shit. For those of you who have been following from the beginning, again, you'll know that I was at one point a PhD student. And one of the biggest critiques of my work was that it had no theoretical foundation. Like, it's so silly. Just thinking about it makes me laugh. But the people who were on my dissertation chair, my committee rather, they stated that, I needed to ground it in theory that was already established in academia. And I told them, like, why? There's none that properly account for what it is that I'm trying to tell you. You know what I mean? And because of that, they felt as though my shit was non-academic and thus incapable or unworthy, I guess, to use, a perhaps more correct language according to them, right? For a dissertation. And, I chose to walk ultimately because of it. So, but I had always known, like, I don't give a fuck what these snooty ass academics have to say shit. I say, dog, like, I know my shit it's precious what I have to offer, and I'm not going to settle just because these motherfuckers don't value it. You know what I'm saying? So in discovering this ancestral knowledge, like, it really does validate it in that sense. Like, you see, motherfucker, I told you my shit was justified. You're not going to learn what they're teaching me in the schools, the universities and shit, but that doesn't mean that it's not legitimized, homie. And it definitely doesn't mean that the universities are the legitimate epistemic authorities, if you will, of our generation. You know what I'm saying? So there's that, like, just feeling validated. You know what I mean? And also, like I said, though, dog, like, a feeling of just being welcomed back home. Okay. I'm not going to lie. Like, I have in the beginning of this indigenization journey have felt at times, a lot of feelings of inadequacy and kind of an imposter syndrome of sorts that even, just by asserting your indigeneity, I guess it's just part of the mental processes, right? And, feeling as like less native, if you will, than the more connected, more traditionally connected relatives. You know what I mean? But it's not the case anymore, dog. Like, it's slowly but surely fading away completely. And there's still many things, dog. There's still many things that I'm like, nah, that's not my space to talk about it. You know what I mean? But I'm slowly becoming more comfortable in my place, and that's what I'm saying. Like, I couldn't be more than happy to be in that position, dog. So that's part of like where I've been these last couple of months. You know what I mean? It's just understanding, accepting, and embracing that role and figuring out my place within that role. Because I do play a part. We all play a part. You know what I mean? And then just me personally trying to become more comfortable and just learn more better that part that it is that I'm supposed to play, right? And more directly, I know one of the more pressing parts about this was just really coming to grips with one of the responsibilities. You know what I mean? There's 4. We all have 4, and we'll find them one day or another if you're, immersed in this work correctly or not. And maybe it'll come to you when you're not immersed in this work correctly, right? I'll talk about that a little bit later. But for now, the idea is I found one of the arrows, if you will, that's been given to me, one of the responsibilities. And that's, the idea of what is the knowledge that you have? What is the purpose that you're going to use it for? If we're following the ancestral ways, just possessing knowledge for the sake of possessing knowledge, to glorify yourself was frowned upon. Like, our ancestors did not appreciate that. You know what I mean? Just to be this person who gathers knowledge for the sake of proving yourself superior to people intellectually because of the ideas that you have and the ways in which you can, express those ideas was frowned upon. Knowledge was not meant for a personal glorification. It was meant, like all other things, for the uplifting of our community. You know what I mean? So it's been me, the knowledge of my deck pot, coming to terms with it, with my flint. How do I use this flint to not only defend and protect, but also to illuminate? You know what I'm saying? As opposed to just posting on the gram and having people be like, oh my God, that Ice Nice is so intelligent. Look at what he has to say. Like, nah, dog, it ain't about that. You know what I mean? I'm trying to slowly become more comfortable with being someone who illuminates the way for other people with this knowledge that I have been blessed to be able to receive, in hopes of uplifting our community, right? You couple that, right, with the lessons that the ancestors tell us about coming to Tlalticpac to add to life by cultivating again a better future for those who are yet to descend to this slippery earth. And, try to find, at least me personally, a place where, you can contribute to that. Like you were, to use that dated fucking overplayed term, like be the gardeners in life, right? But it really is kind of like that, homie. Okay. And, I'm not going to lie. Like, again, going back to the podcast and why I haven't done it, I'm not going to front, dog. While a part of me has always sincerely wanted this podcast in general and the entirety of my teaching career, to be, about the knowledge that I have to offer and try to make the world a better place to live in, I won't front and, pretend like I haven't been driven at times by the vainglorious, I created this, now give me credit for it mentality. You know what I'm saying? Like, yeah, dog, I'm guilty of that. And I don't want to be that way because I understand how that can be counterproductive to what it is the ultimate goal is. And that is, of course, illuminating the path, right, for those of us who are still, engaging along this journey in such a way where doing so can help them cultivate better futures. Again, not in the presence, a current present that we're all living in, but a better future for those of us those that are yet to descend, right? So again, just slowly taking this time, taking a break away from the podcast to try to work away from that vainglorious nature. Like, oh, how many listens did I get? How many downloads did I get? How many people are sharing my shit? You know what I mean? Like, doesn't matter. Even if it's just one person, dog, that's all that matters, right? What matters is how do we use this knowledge that we've been developed, this ancestral knowledge that's been preserved for tens of thousands of years to be of true benefit and service in a way that can genuinely leave a tangible impact, dog. I've also been trying to come to terms with how it is that I share the content that I, create on this podcast, but also the content, like the intellectual property, if you will, that I create for social media. Because again, like just coming to doing the shadow work, I guess, to use the Western language, right? And reflecting with my sacred Tezcatlipoca, coming to understand the vainglorious nature that, again, I engage with when it comes to social media, follower counts, like counts, comment counts, like all that kind of shit, dog. Like, it doesn't matter. And, like just in the past couple of months, me coming to the realization of how I say it doesn't matter, but how it does matter. You know what I mean? So in an effort to try to dissociate myself from that and make it like what it really is about, the knowledge, right? I've been trying to lay off of it a little bit. And it seems like right now, I'm not off of it completely, but damn, dog, right now it's as good a time as any for a lot of us, I think, to reconsider our relationship with social media. And honestly, I do see a lot of people doing that. I've spoken with a few, quote unquote, content creators who have completely given up or are considering giving up their social media accounts, some with considerable, reach, far more than mine. And, I find that interesting. I find it fascinating. And, I genuinely do think it's like a collective movement on behalf of humanity to do away from these instruments of control that, the bourgeoisie, to use that language, have created to keep us consumed and locked into this artificial reality that many of us are slowly starting to realize it's not real. You know what I mean? The veil is being lifted, I believe, collectively from humanity, and not in like some new age hippie, fifth dimension elevation type shit, but just in general, dog, people are becoming more and more critical and they're becoming more and more aware. And at the same time, I know, like any dying, being, the established order is not going to go out without a fight, homie. Like, they are doing what they can. They are doing the best that they can currently right now to keep people immersed on social media, dog. And, I really, really, really noticed this when it happened with the Olympics, dog. So like the Olympics, I've never really kept up with them to begin with because, I think they're just pay the athletes, dog, first and foremost. Okay. Second of all, like for those of us who've done research onto the Olympics, not the podcast to talk about it, but I encourage you to do so. If you haven't, you'll see just how it's just a fucking money laundering scheme, dog. And they just take money from the citizens of the countries that they're hosting them in, basically, right? So just off those two principles, I've never really vibed with the Olympics. On top of the fact that most of the sports are fucking boring, right? But The opening ceremony was one thing that I always did keep in common, keep like up with, you know what I mean? Up until that the pre-COVID one. After that, I was like, all right, this is enough. And the reason why is because it's quite clear, dog, that it's just an energy harvesting ritual. It's predictive programming. They're telling you what they're going to do, and they're just showing it to you in this massive global scale when all attention is fixated on that one singular event, right, of humanity. And, you know, I just, I don't want to keep being that motherfucker that just talks about this shit, but doesn't apply it. You know what I mean? And I'm starting to realize that is a lot of the quote unquote woke, not woke, because I hate that the fucking liberals have taken this, the progressive libs, right? But I guess I would say the conscious community, the people who fashion themselves, myself included, as conscious, right? I find as though we're getting into this space now where it's becoming commodified and people have figured out you can make money being conscious and aware. And that beyond the trite fucking, you know, proclamations of staying woke, people are doing anything but, myself included. And what I mean by that is because we'll, you know, get on social media and we'll talk about the evils of the Olympic ceremony. But then, yeah, there we are, dog, watching the fucking Olympic opening ceremony. And it's just like, bro, you're detached, you know, and this is what I was saying earlier, going back to the ancestral teachings. You're detached from the fucking, from what it is that you're saying, the message that you're saying. You're not really conveying this message with the intention of uplifting the community, of cultivating a better future. You're saying it with the intention of bringing attention. You're saying it with the intention of bringing attention to yourself. And in doing so, it's highly disingenuous, because who are you to fucking sit here and, you know, tell people that they're fucking in the wrong for doing shit that you yourself are doing? You know what I mean? Like, it's very highly hypocritical. And I see that currently unfolding with a lot of the, again, conscious, you know, accounts on social media where, you know, they're trying to tell us about all the evils of Hollywood, but it's like, bro, you only know about the evils of Hollywood because you're keeping up with Hollywood, right? This whole Diddy fiasco, like, it's fucking vile, it's repugnant, and needs to have attention put to it. But it's morphing into this weird fucking space where it's being commodified. Like, this quote unquote conspiracy conscious community is being commodified itself, and in turn is being defanged and absorbed into the dominant structure where, you know, motherfuckers are going to be talking about Diddy and human trafficking the same way that they're fucking talking about serial killers and, you know, murder mystery. And it's just going to, you know, it's just one step away. They already, we have, this is a natural reaction of culture. I'm not trying to say like, this is bad, don't joke about this. That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying that, like, in becoming so normalized, it's going to just be like almost like an acceptable thing. Not because we accept it, but because it's just going to be like, oh yeah, Diddy, that was so funny. He was doing human trafficking. You know what I mean? And it's coming to the place now where they're talking about it even in the most sanitary of places, like sanitized of places rather, like fucking E-News, for instance. You know what I mean? Where it's being absorbed into this fucking spectrum of celebrity pop culture to the point where it's not even fucking real anymore. It's just something that, like a movie, essentially. You know what I'm saying? And, yeah, I just, there's this weird disconnect between that and the actual importance of learning these lessons and applying these lessons that I felt that me personally, especially with social media, and being so concerned with how many people I can reach because I'm trying to build my account, you know what I mean? Is there's a disconnect, and the disconnect is like, what is the point of knowing this? Why do you have this knowledge? Do you genuinely have this knowledge because you're using it, again, to cultivate a better present and, you know, a better future? Or are you just cultivating this knowledge so people can look at you and be like, oh, look at that account. They're so woke. This person is so, they got their fucking pulse on the, you know, they got their finger on the pulse of the conspiracy underground. You know what I'm saying? And it's like, in many instances, I genuinely believe that's the case. And I personally, I don't want to be one of those peoples, man. There's a logical inconsistency there that I just, you know, I realized that I myself was doing, again, using education for what purpose, right? And I'm trying my best to not really be a part of it, dog. You know, it's this weird balance where if I want you to hear my podcast, I got to do it. But at the same time, when I do it, I get immersed in it. So I'm just trying to find that balance, you know what I mean? And seeing where I personally feel comfortable with, you know, committing myself, because at the end of the day, dog, this really is it's like the ultimate weapon, right? The ultimate, like, treasure, I should state, more importantly, that's constantly being sought after. And that is our attention, dog. Like, our energy goes where attention flows. You know what I mean? This is Not new. I'm not telling you something you've never heard before. I'm not telling you something that's never been said before. I'm just saying, like, it's pretty clear that our conscious and, our conscious focus, our psychic focus is a commodity. And it's fucking, ultimately our choice to decide where it is that attention goes. Whether we're aware of that or not, different story. What the role is that I'm going to play in that, what my function is going to be in all this, I still don't know, dog. But one thing that I do know for sure is that I personally do not want to be a person, and I definitely don't want to be someone that interacts with, let alone perpetuates this mindless celebrity culture in any way, shape, or form, dog. Like, again, going back to the Diddy shit, bro. Like, while it's great that human trafficking is getting the attention that it deserves, I feel like it's being commodified and defamed. But I understand, it's to be part of something, in order to get the attention that people want the human trafficking to get, eventually it's going to get to people that are going to commodify and use it as a way to, build their own personal platform. And that's like, you got to take the good with the bad, right? But what I'm saying is that in doing so, we're potentially losing we're losing focus. Again, psychic focus, dog, right? And in this case, let's use the Diddy example. Like, it's great. Good. He should be getting, what he did is vile and repugnant. It should be getting attention. But we're also kind of losing track of the attention, where our attention should go, dog. Realistically, Diddy got sacrificed, dog. And he got sacrificed by people, people are always like, but Diddy's rich. He's one of the power elite. No, he's not, dog. No, he's not. The power elite are the people that fucking made Diddy fabulously wealthy. They're the people who cut his paychecks, right? The people that you'll never know, the people that you'll never see. That's who it is that we're talking about. And those same motherfuckers sacrificed him the moment that it was convenient to do so. In this particular case, in order to draw attention from what at least I think are more pressing issues, dog, like Hurricane Helene, where, all of Appalachia is fucking being besieged essentially by FEMA from the inevitability. We're fucking nuclear brinksmanship, dog. We're on the doorstep of World War III, bro. Right? Fucking from the longshoreman strike currently going on, like AI and the battle of automation, all this shit, dog, is gonna, disrupt the supply chain, right before not only Christmas hits, dog, but, in regards to our groceries and all this kind of shit. Like, this is all real shit that's happening, bro. The continuing escalation and expansion of Israel, like, and, the onslaught that they're, the continued genocide against the Palestinian people, all real fucking important shit, dog. And again, I'm not saying human trafficking isn't. I'm saying that by introducing the pop culture element of it, it's kind of defanged a lot of this. It's gotten many people completely ignoring, like, the real, material shit that's happening right now and invested in the celebrity and gossip world, right? But more importantly, like, it's defanging these actual real heavy conspiracies, quote unquote, and making them just like, part of the common parlance. And that's, that's dangerous, dog. It's dangerous in that it helps normalize it the same way that, again, I'm not trying to cast shade, and I'm not trying to say, like, I'm not trying to fucking make these value laden statements, dog. But, the same way that, again, just true crime and serial killers have been commodified. At one point, they were seen to even consider, these people was considered vile and repugnant, right? But now they're just part of, like, the common everyday, cultural intake. And that's the idea of that happening with, human trafficking is pretty terrifying to me, dog, honestly. Anyways, before I move on from this whole human trafficking shit, dog, at least for today, I did want to make one thing, like, explicitly clear. And that is, what my position is in regards to human trafficking and how it differs specifically from the people who are reduced, perhaps fairly or not, as fringe alt-right conspiracies. Okay. And that is that, unlike, again, I don't even like reducing it myself, because I don't know what of it is true, dog. All right. I don't know what of, like, Pizzagate is true, for instance. You know what I mean? I do know that it's potentially been weaponized on both ends against the conspiracy community and by the conspiracy community. It's been weaponized to accuse everybody of fucking human trafficking, when perhaps that's not necessarily what's happening. But it's also been weaponized by the people who are being accused by it to dismiss what was, the actual situation behind the quote unquote Pizzagate, right? And that's like what I mean when I'm saying I'm trying to disassociate myself with that, because while those aren't necessarily unimportant, that's not what I'm doing, dog. At the end of the day, that's not what I'm doing. I remind you, hood philosophy is a philosophy that's rooted in indigenous knowledge, in Nahuatl knowledge specifically. And what makes the Nahuatl knowledge part important in this particular case is that, dog, we as a community here on Turtle Island have been dealing with human trafficking since fucking European colonizers set foot on Turtle Island, bro. Like, there's just no ifs, ands, or buts about it. From the moment Europeans landed here, they started stealing people from this land, and they have not stopped in the 500 years that they've been here, dog. There's plenty of reports out there about how thousands of children, tens of thousands of children go missing every single year. They don't missing, dog, because, these are kids that have been filtered through the, United States government. And if you know anything about the government, dog, they don't lose track of shit. They know exactly where everything is always. So this idea that they're fucking losing kids, that they just lose track of these kids, is nonsense, dog. These kids are being trafficked. And it's just another continuation of this human trafficking by European, in this case, structures, because this government is a European apparatus that was violently imposed on this land and is being used to exploit not only the land and the resources, but the people, dog, like the actual people themselves. You know what I mean? And that's where my shit is coming from. Like, hood philosophy, indigenous philosophy, like, we're trying to decolonize, bro. And part of that implies, like, quit fucking waging war against us, bro. Like quit waging war against our communities. Quit stealing our fucking kids. Quit trying to fucking murder and poison us in our land. You know what I mean? And the fact that these fringe alt-right conspiracists are on the same wave is like not an indictment on them per se, but it is what it is, what I'm trying to say. Like, we're both on this same wave because we're both being subjected to it by this fucking violent settler colonial government, dog. But in no way, shape, or form should the two be conflated and say, well, hood philosophy is just like this, because it's not, right? I'm aware of that. I'm conscious of it, but I'm telling you explicitly, like, no, my shit is completely different, dog. And that's one respect. The second way that it's different, bro, is like, as I've immersed myself deeper into this ancestral knowledge, I should state, I have learned, again, not learned, remembered, I guess is a better way of putting it. I've unveiled to myself a lot of ways in which our ancestors viewed individuals, okay? And one of the things is like the moral responsibility that we have as people, dog. And, real shit, I don't even got to ground it in my ancestral ways, dog, in our ancestral ways. I don't even got to ground it in a fucking book. This is some shit you just know as a person, bro. And, for me personally, that is like growing up, in the hood specifically, and still to this day, like I've never fucked with people who abuse women and children ever. And in the hood, like, people who knowingly abuse women and children are fucking pariahs. They're not welcome, right? And I'm not saying that's why I didn't do it, because I didn't want to be a pariah. I'm saying because I've always known it's fucking wrong, dog. Like, I grew up in an abusive home where I saw my stepdad violently beat my mother, and from a young age, I was always trying to defend her, dog. And that has always carried over with me to, adulthood, where, just protecting innocence has always been a very, very important thing to me. You know what I'm saying? And it's not just me, because, again, in the hood, people who abuse women and children they're not welcome, right? So in this particular case, what I'm saying is, like, it's about tacit consent is the ultimate point I'm trying to get to. And tacit consent is the idea that if you're not actively, like, opposing something, then you're tacitly agreeing to it, right? And in this case, it's very easy to accuse people of being a conspiracy theorist because they're pointing out people like Oprah and Obama for their associations with Diddy. But to me, dog, it's like, well, you can judge a person by the company that they keep, homie. That's like, you don't fuck a book. You don't need a book to tell you that. That's your lived experience telling you that you can judge somebody based off the company that they keep, right? And, I'm sure there's people out there who will try to dismiss that and say, no, I know, terrible people that I'm friends with, to which I would say, then you're probably a little bit suspect yourself, right? Like, for instance, me personally, I would never be friends with somebody who I knew had sexually assaulted a woman or, had violated somebody's innocence. I would never be friends with that person. I don't give a fuck how far back we go. I don't give a fuck how cool that person is. at the end of the day, like, you violated, homie. And because of that, like, you were not a good person and I cannot associate with you because as such, I am guilty by association. I am enabling your shitty behavior by, being around somebody who, sexually assaults women. I am enabling the sexual assault of women, right? So I just by inherently cannot be around those type of people. You know what I mean? And that when I do see people that kick it with people like that, I judge them. And you should judge them because those are enablers. They're enabling such actions, right? So when you see pictures of like Diddy with Obama and fucking Oprah and all these celebrities and, you find out the connections that these people have to maybe not the, Obama himself, but Oprah, dog, to people like John of God, who has been found guilty of human trafficking, of having a sex farm where he impregnated teenagers to sell their babies. Like, that's human trafficking, dog. You know what I mean? And that motherfucker was on Oprah many times. And Oprah's friends with like Obama, dog. And, you're telling me these motherfuckers, they don't know all this shit that's going on? Like, nah, dog, I'm not buying that, homie. You know what I mean? And again, you can call it fringe, alt-right, conspiratorial. I call it just a basic fucking survival strategy for navigating life in the hood. You do not want to associate yourself with people who could potentially put you or others in danger. Anyways, homie, moving on and keeping in line with a little bit of the ancestral shit that I've been talking about. These last couple of days, have been pretty powerful, right? A lot of really strong solar energy out there, a lot of really strong bioenergy in general. The moon, the sun, Venus, a lot of powerful energy to start off with. That's what I should say, right? In general, this is like a sacred time. But again, it's like a weird culmination between like three sacred things that have been occurring lately that I just felt deserved merit, were worthy of discussion. Man, my words are not working right now. Trying to get back into the flow of shit, dog. My bad, right? I appreciate your patience with me on this front. But for one, we just finished the Tonalpawali, dog. So that's like a 260 days, right? We just finished a 260 days. It's not a new year, just so we're clear. It's not a new year. But we just finished a 260-day count that it culminates with Matlakie Xochitl, right? The 13th flower. And because of that, it's time for us to offer up the flowers that were, previously developed that were developed in the previous 260 days, right? The flowers being what it is that we have to offer to life. The flowers of joy, they could be flowers of grief. It doesn't matter, they just, it doesn't matter what kind of flowers they are. Because, the flowers of life come in a variety of different, varieties. You have flowers that are, beautiful and they smell pleasant, and you have flowers that are the exact opposite of that, right? Either way is that we should treasure these flowers, because one thing that we do know about them for sure is regardless of what kind of flowers we get, they don't last. These flowers don't last, right? The goal here being is to cultivate a garden of beautiful flowers the best that you can, but even the flowers that aren't, traditionally beautiful have things to offer us as well. Regardless, again, as I mentioned, the flowers, they don't last, bro. But the fruits that they bear, whoa, that's a different story, okay? Because while flowers wither, it's, the fruits can potentially last for a long time, right? And again, it's important to enjoy the flowers while they're in bloom is the point that I'm trying to get to here, right? And that's one of the things that this 260-day count tries to remind us, okay? What it is that you worked on in the last 260 days or didn't work on, because one way or another, they're going to offer you flowers. You're going to cultivate those flowers, right? And then on top of the culmination of a Tonalpawali and, starting a new one, we also just recently culminated the 40-day period that is, traditionally known as the actual Dia de los Muertos. What has come to be known as the Dia de los Muertos. We just cultivated the 40-day period that is actually that in the ancestral ways, right? Which means now that we are onto a new veintena, which is called Oxpanistli, okay? And I basically it's sweeping away, right? The flowers fall, okay, and then the winds come to sweep it away. It's a metaphor for cleansing, and it's time for, getting rid of that which no longer serves you, to use the Western understanding, right? But I don't really have too much of an understanding of Oxpanistli, so it's not really my place to talk about it. I'm just letting you know, like, that's where we currently are, right? But all I'm trying to say is that those three things put together, right? It's made for very interesting times. Which again, you can call this fucking, you could dismiss this all you want. But I will just simply say, if you think that everything that's currently happening right now in terms of what I've been discussing, like Diddy, the escalating war and conflict in the Middle East, the Appalachia and all that kind of shit. If you think that's all by coincidence, dog, then more power to you. Okay, but for those of us that follow the ancestral wisdom of the stars, we know that this was a very powerful time. Okay, and that in general, we're currently enmeshed in some very interesting years, and that they're not going to get any easier anytime soon. There's hope. There's like light at the end, if you will, but right now is not that time. Right now is a very difficult time. Okay. But like I said, not my place really to talk about it because I'm still learning it and I don't want to, do it any injustice. I just want to introduce it, right? But what I can't talk about, because I'm fucking an expert on this, is Chicanidad, dog. Like in the time that I've been gone, I've had a lot of thoughts on Chicanidad. Not a lot, but some, okay, that I really wanted to speak on. And I guess the first one, the most appropriate one to begin with, is just the thoughts on Dia de los Muertos. I used to really get like a little bit offended. I'm not gonna lie, typical fucking lefty looking for injustices everywhere, right? But it really would. I'm not gonna lie. It would bother me, bro, seeing the commodification of Dia de los Muertos. I remember once I saw Dallas Cowboys sugar skull at Walmart, and I can't believe I'm even admitting that how deeply it bothered me, right? But it's just the culmination between the Cowboys and then Walmart, and it just really bothered me. You know what I mean? But I guess I've come to a point now where I've accepted it like for what it is, for one. But more importantly, I'm also in coming to terms with my indigeneity. I'm more also directly coming to terms with my Chicanidad, which implies that there is a little bit, you can see it in my complexion, right? The lightest motherfucker in my family. So it's there. But coming to terms with the European, I guess, in my blood, right? That was forcefully inserted into our family because there's no contact with any European people in our family, dog. It was something that happened a long time ago, I'm sure. And the person who did it was a vile, repugnant person, I'm quite sure, right? Motherfuck with those Hispanidad Chicanx fools want to fucking talk about, right? Because I have no connection to them. My family has no connection to them at all, right? The European peoples, not the Hispanidad peoples. Yeah, no connection to them either, right? But what I'm trying to state is that I'm slowly coming to terms with that. And because of it, with what we're constantly told in the Chicano community, and that is that we are mixed, right? We're not native, we're mixed. And that we are not native, we are of native descent. And it's just like, bro, it's not even an insult anymore. I know who I am. I know what I am. I know culturally and genetically what I am, and I don't really need the acceptance of outsiders to tell me otherwise. You know what I'm saying? And moreover, even if we are a hybrid, so fucking what, dog? So in terms of like Dia de los Muertos, what I'm trying to state is that I don't want to come on here and be like, you're following the wrong ways, because the real Dia de los Muertos is 40-day celebration and it's called Xochohuitzil and all kinds of, I don't care. It's not that I don't care. It's just the knowledge protects itself first and foremost, right? The people that want to know about Xochohuitzil can do so. And more importantly, that doesn't dismiss the creations of, the mixed culture, if you will, the hybridization, because culture is dynamic, dog. People are dynamic, and culture is built to suit the needs of people at any given time. Our ancestors fucking syncretized the knowledge that they had into European traditions in order to ensure their survival. And Dia de los Muertos is a prime example of that. Yes, it was a little bit about offerings to the dead, right? But the only way they could do it is if they would ally with the Gregorian calendar, to which they were only allowed 2 days, 3 days, I guess, right? And which they gladly took because it was better than completely losing their tradition altogether, right? So, in this sense, it's like, yeah, I'm just trying to say that I've come to terms with, the commodification of Dia de los Muertos, but also like, it doesn't make it any less of an important holiday just because it's mixed in any way, shape, or form. Just like it doesn't make people like myself, possibly even you, any less indigenous just because we are mixed as well, right? And my mixed is very small, just so we're clear. But damn, I got the really light skin, bro. Everyone else in my family got that really beautiful fucking skin of the earth, right? Me, got that light skin, bro. I tan nice, though. I tan nice. Speaking of tanning nicely, I'll move on to my next thought about Chicanidad that I've been having. It's a beautiful segue if I don't, not to glory, not to pat myself on the back, but it was a pretty beautiful segue. I've been thinking a lot about the N-word in the Chicano community, dog. Now, growing up in the hood, bro, this is it's not a non-issue because obviously, even as young as elementary school, with our, black relatives, they understand the weight of that word, and, some of them take umbrage with it. But a lot of them don't, dog. A lot of them in the hood really didn't. So it was not uncommon to hear, Mexicans refer to other black people refer to Mexicans, and Mexicans refer to Mexicans as, the N-word. And for whatever reason, this, I don't say for whatever reason, like I understand why. It's an important issue. And it's an important topic that needs to be addressed, right? In the further attempt to continue to establish solidarity between the black and Mexican communities. But I just was watching, the debates unfold online about whether or not brown people, Mexicans, should be using that word. And honestly, dog, for me personally, this is coming from someone who's been the proud recipient of many end passes, which I've never cashed in. I cashed in one when I was in 6th grade. And one of the dudes that we were kicking it with didn't know that I got it. And he fucking tried to slap me, right? And it was at that point that I realized, like, oh, I can't just be indiscriminately dropping these N-bombs around people that don't know that I have a pass. You know what I mean? And even then, after that, like in middle school, I'm telling you, I stopped even using it altogether because it just, beyond like not really being my shit, I had the privilege of growing up around Chicanos, dog. Not like father figures or nothing, but just the Chicano Cholo community specifically in this instance, you know what I'm saying? And because of that, I had access to our own language, and I didn't need to run around calling people the N-word because I had other words to call my homies, right? Homie is just one of them. Homeboy is another one, of course, right? A variation. But the fact of the matter is that Chicano culture is a rich culture, and Cholo culture is no exception. And because of that, we have our own language. The language specifically is called Calo, right? Which apparently is like a language that was inherited from the Romani peoples, the Romanis, the Gypsies from Spain, who were brought to Mexico, right? Now, I don't know what the relationship is between Cholo slang and the Romani people, aside from the very obvious, like those are very obvious Romani words that you could trace the etymology, right? Of like the word chavo, right? I always wonder why the dude from System of a Down was called Chavo, right? The drummer. And apparently because the Armenians have a lot of other language as well, is influenced by the Romani language. And because of that, that's where his language comes from, that his name came from, right? I was like, this dude kind of looks like a Mexican, and he's got a Mexican name. I didn't know at the time, right? But no, it's not a Mexican name. It's Calo, the language from Calo, right? And again, so the Romani peoples brought it to, well, they were forced, I should state, to Mexico, where I'm sure like it, integrated into the Mexican language, which was in turn adopted and put into play by Mexican Spanish, I should state, and which was adopted in turn and put into effect by Cholo culture, Chicano culture, right? So one of the many words, like, yeah, chavo is one of them, right? But also words like ese and carnal and compadre and vato, right? Like a bunch of words, bro, that Chicano peoples have had for a long time, to be able to refer to each other as, you know what I'm saying? And these are all words that I grew up hearing people, the Chicanidad, I grew up hearing, dudes refer to each other as such, right? Homie, homeboy, yeah, obviously, but also, again, vato, carnal, ese, compadre, right? Like a bunch of different ways in which we have to fucking refer to one another, to the point where I never really needed to call somebody an N-word because I had the cultural connection to the language that was adopted by our Chicano, forecomers. And because of that, I was able to utilize it. So I guess the point that I'm trying to make here is that there was a lot of like shade being cast towards the Mexican community, which, whatever, like deservedly so, okay? And in response, the reality is, well, on the one hand, as I mentioned before, I understand because, in America, we're told, Mexicans, that we're white, but we're not. We know that. You know what I mean? And very few of us, aside from the little fucking sellout coconut fools, ever really like adopt and embrace white culture completely. And instead what happens is that the majority of us, or at least those of us in the hood, we embraced black culture. Like we were always gravitated more towards black culture. You know what I mean? So it's, to me at least, it's understandable why so many Mexicans are running around calling each other the N-word. But at the same time, like, I feel like we have failed them. We being the new OGs in life. You know what I mean? Because the people that spoke Calo, dog, they're old now. They're like, You know what I mean? A lot of them are in their 70s and, 60s, 70s. They're getting up in age, bro. They're not connected to this younger generation. We are the intermediary between them and this younger generation. So in that respect, what I'm trying to state then is that we have failed this younger generation by our lack of embracing our Chicano culture and by utilizing the language that our, culture has created in order for us to refer to one another, so that we're, instead of having these little foos running around, foos another one. How can I forget foo? You know what I'm saying? That's my favorite one. Instead of having these little foos running around calling each other the N-word, they should be running around calling each other ese, camarada, compadre, vato, carnal, foo. You know what I mean? But they're not. And a lot of that is because, well, yeah, for sure, they've embraced the black culture. But more importantly, because I embraced the black culture too, but I also had the Chicano culture to look up to and learn from. And that's where me, right, and others like myself have failed this younger generation, because we have let, in many ways, this language, this Kalo language die and stop referring to each other as such, right? So in a way, it's like, if you really want to fix that issue, it's incumbent upon us to start utilizing that language so that these kids can fucking adopt it themselves and learn how to refer to each other as such. Because it's cringe to run around calling each other the N-word. I'm not gonna lie, right? Like that's for black people. That's their community. That's their thing. If they give you an N-pass, cool. Like, live it up, right? But B, like, we have our own shit, and we should be proud of that. We should be embracing our own culture. We should be, keeping it alive, essentially. There's still, man, I'm trying to get through it. Like I said, I'm not gonna rush through it, man. I have so much that I want to talk about, but I don't want to like fucking. I don't want to force it, dog. I don't want to force the funk. You know what I mean? I did want to talk about a little bit of conspiracy shit, but at this point, I don't want to think. I know what my podcast is. Like, in these last 3 months, I've had like a long time to reflect on what this podcast is and what I want it to be. So I know what I want to talk about, right? But what I'm trying to state is that I'm trying to get through the conspiracies, the movies, and the philosophy, the horror movies specifically, right? And right now, I'm currently at I finished the intro. I finished the Chicanidad part. Now I'm at the conspiracy part. But, in looking at this, the conspiracy that I have up here for you all, I can't even file it under the conspiracy umbrella, bro, because it's not a conspiracy. Like, this shit is actively happening right now. You know what I mean? And I guess just seeing it unfold is kind of crazy. There was two that I wanted to talk about, Doug. The first of which being the weather manipulation, and the second of which being Greater Israel. Okay, so I guess I'll just briefly discuss them, because again, they're happening right now. But I wrote this, like a month ago, man. Just been like taking little notes down. But now that I'm talking about it, like, this shit is already unfolding, bro, and it's perfectly fine. But what I'm stating is that it's just disheartening in the sense that I kind of wish it was a conspiracy, because that would mean that there's still, I'm not trying to sound hyperbolic, but it would just be nice for once for shit to not be so fucked up. You know what I mean? But the reason why I'm stating I'm not trying to be so hyperbolic is because despite how fucked up everything is, I am an eternal optimist, and I maintain faith in the human spirit, dog. So it is what it is. Okay. So the one I want to talk about first was the weather modification with Project Popeye. For those of you that were unaware, Project Popeye was an operation that was engaged by the United States military in Vietnam from 1967 to 1972. And what they were trying to do is they were cloud seeding. They were trying to extend the monsoon season on the Ho Chi Minh Trail. They were essentially using the weather as a form of, as a weapon. They weaponized the weather. Okay. And, again, this is what I'm talking about when I state that for once it would be nice if I didn't file this under the conspiracy category and it wasn't real. You know what I'm saying? Like, for one, we know that cloud seeding is real. They make it rain in the Middle East. They have news reports and articles about it all the time. For two, dog, like, this Hurricane Helene, very convenient, and it looks to be in many ways the same as many of the other hurricanes, like in Cancun, for instance, that were targeting specific communities that coincidentally happen to be sitting on fucking troves of resources that are worth trillions of dollars, right? And it's just unfortunate that there ain't no war but class war, dog. It's unfortunate that there ain't no war but class war. And again, just to reiterate some shit that I posted on the gram, for those of you that don't follow, OG underscore Ice Nice 13, right? Better late than never. But what I was stating is that when we say that there's no war but class war, dog, like to think about it in terms of, you know, somebody having more money than another person is so simplistic and reductive. And it's just fucking, if that's what your framework is for understanding Marxism in general, congratulations. You are a proud recipient of miseducation. You know what I'm saying? Because it doesn't matter how fucking rich individual citizens in the United States or the world are, the wealth that we possess pales in comparison to the fucking wealth that the masters of mankind possess, that the bourgeoisie possesses, okay? You can own all the houses, you can own all the rental properties, all the nice vehicles, right? All that will be for naught when you get struck with cancer and you have to sell them all back to the government in order to try to pay for the chemotherapy. Again, that was designed to treat the cancer that you received because the air is poisoned, the food is poisoned, the land is poisoned, and the water is poisoned, okay? Why are all four of those poisoned? Because the people who fucking own the means of production, the bourgeoisie, the masters of mankind, poison them. And they are trying to kill us. And they make money off of us being sick and fucking dead. Okay? And that's what we're talking about when we speak of a class war. They don't fucking take prisoners, dog. They take fucking sick people and dead people. Right? And it's a constant fucking bombardment by these people in terms of the physical form with shit like the hurricanes that are currently happening in Helene. Which could, in my opinion, if you ask me, dog, there's no way that they just fucking, it happened to hit this area for the, you know, one of the first times as devastatingly as it did, that is rich in a resource that is just the quartz that is in such high demand in this technological era that we're living in, right? And so like they're fucking attacking us with the weather. They're attacking us in the spiritual front by fucking trying to sever the connection that people have to, like, you know, a power. I don't want to say God, because I don't want to give the impression I'm only talking about God, but God, Christianity, like that definitely counts, dog. But also like non-Christian, non-Abrahamic connections to source, you know what I mean? To Teot, whatever it is that you want to call it, the sacred, the divine. Like they're constantly trying to fucking chip away at that with their reductive Western materialism and telling us that shit doesn't matter. Again, in complete contradistinction to what our ancestors would tell us, where our ancestors tell us that we come here to sow a better future for those who are yet to come. These motherfuckers are trying to sever that connection and tell us, no, there's no point in doing so because you're just a inanimate physical object that's going to fucking die and return to dust, and any thought of you ever existing will cease to exist the moment anybody that remembers you dies as well, right? Like, that's what I'm saying. Like, it disempowers people. It's a form of, you know, imposing nihilism to ensure that their fucking status quo goes unchallenged. You know what I mean? So that's what I mean when I state that they're trying to sever that connection. But it's also in terms of like a constant war on our psychic, our consciousness, dog, where they're trying to manipulate our attention with shit like the Diddy spectacle or the Olympics, right? Because they know that they can harvest that energy to, you know, bring about powerful shit that they're trying to summon. You know what I'm saying? So that's what I'm talking about. Like when I say that's what we're talking about when we talk about no war but class war. And that's what I'm saying. Like when it comes to this weather manipulation shit, like it's quite clear they can do it. They did it in the 60s and 70s during Vietnam, and that was with the technology available to them then. Can you imagine the shit that they're capable of now in 2024, allegedly, according to European peoples, right? The technology available today, which is far superior to what was available in the 60s and 70s. You know what I mean? Like, it's so beyond our realm of comprehension that people, rather than actually grasp how horrifying this class war truly is, would simply rather reduce it to conspiracy. But it's like, nah, man, don't be a complacency theorist, bro. Like, yes, you are under attack. We are all under attack. And, you know, the only way that we can fucking potentially get out of this is if we were to come together and unite under a common class consciousness where we understand that it's not about your ethnicity. It's not about your gender, your sexual orientation. It ain't about none of that. Not because those aren't important, but because ultimately they are divisive identities that have been created to divide us among ourselves. Because if we're divided among ourselves, then we can't unite against the one true danger that poses an existential threat to all of existence. And that is, of course, the bourgeoisie, right? They're going to poison the planet to non-existence. They're going to fucking the climate change is going to, like what your beliefs are on climate change. Like, you can't tell me that shit's not changing, bro. You know what I'm saying? The food, the diseases, like, it's all a result of this capitalist bourgeois structure, bro. And while we're sitting here divided among ourselves, focused on, mindless celebrity gossip, like, they're not. They're united in their desire to fucking completely eradicate any fucking trace of resistance that poses a threat to their established order. You know what I'm saying? I said I wanted to talk about Greater Israel as well, but I think I'm good just for now, dog. Like, just thinking about the weather shit, I'm just like, you know what? I'll put aside the Greater Israel shit for another podcast, dog. And perhaps even the movies, because even though I've seen some really great ones that I want to fucking like introduce you all to and talk about, for the sake of trying to get this podcast, wrap it up. Because again, I'm trying to be mindful of your time, and this bitch is almost it's at about an hour, and I still got a little bit more important shit that I want to talk about. I want to just move on for today to some shit that I really do want to start talking about, and that is The Republic by Plato, Doug. Now, again, my views on the ancient Greeks are pretty well established. I'm not going to reiterate them. Like, fuck Plato from forever, okay? But the reason why I want to talk about this particular book is because it's very relevant, I think, to what's happening right now. And that's not to say that because that's correct or true, but because it's, an example that I believe is most accessible to the people, to the majority of people, right? So the reason why, I'll just qualify it, I don't like really, in this particular case, talking about it is because, our ancestors, the Nahuatl, they had their society structured like clockwork, bro. In fact, one of the things that was observed by Europeans when they got here, after they, completely overthrew the established order, is they asked, why is everyone seemingly lost and, just has no idea what to do? And one of the responses that was given to them is because they disrupted the flow of things. Like, the cities were run in a very meticulous manner where everyone knew their place and everyone acted in accordance to that. And when that order was disrupted by the Spaniards, it caused chaos, and it just completely threw everything into upheaval, right? So, but that's shit that's not within, it's not because it's not important. It's not important. And it's not my place to talk about because it is our ancestral legacy. I'm just saying, like, I wouldn't do it justice is the point that I'm trying to state. And unfortunately, for better or worse, because I am trained in the Western tradition of philosophy more than in the ancestral ways, I think that the point that I'm trying to state would be better explicated through this European philosophy, right? So The Republic itself is a book that I just started teaching like in detail in my own classes, right? And just seeing the parallels and it's just crazy, dog. And the point that I'm trying to make here is that, again, it's not because Plato and Socrates were like these insightful sage-like peoples, just so much as it is an insight into human nature and that humans across time and space and culture consistently come to the same conclusions, bro. And in this particular case, when it comes to the Republic, like, just seeing the, where we are currently as a society being talked about thousands of years ago, it's like, yeah, humans are humans, dog. We're going to be humans. You know what I mean? And the idea here being is that as terrifying as everything seems right now, as terrifying as it unquestionably is, the fact of the matter is, dog, it's always been terrifying. Being a human is terrifying. Life in general is fucking terrifying. You know what I mean? And moreover, it's predictable in the sense that we haven't evolved like since hundreds of thousands of years, And because of that, the actions that we engage in haven't really changed in many ways. And you can look to the past to be a pretty accurate, in many instances, forecast for the future because of this. You know what I'm saying? Which is why I've really, really started taking to teaching the Republic in my classes, because, again, we're here to sow a better future for those of us who have yet to descend to Tlaltikpak. And part of that for me implies in my classes, right? Getting students to just getting students to be aware of the political environment, bro. One of the things that I, at the beginning of any semester is I ask my students, like, what do y'all know about politics? And the answer, for the most part, is overwhelmingly nothing. Like, we don't fucking know anything about politics. You know what I mean? Which I'm not going to sit here and be like, well, that's bad. I'm not pontificating. I'm just stating, me personally, I don't find it acceptable that we aren't aware collectively of what the current political climate is. Not because I want you to go out and vote and like change shit, but because you should probably just know what's happening. You know what I mean? In the world around you, because whether you fucking partake in it or not, it's still going to affect you. You know what I mean? So in doing so, I've been teaching this a lot, and it's just crazy, bro, to see the parallels that exist from then to now, right? So in these next couple of episodes, bro, it's a total of 10 books, but I'm not going to talk about the first one because the first one it's kind of meaningless. The first one just sets up the rest of the books, right? But for these next couple of episodes, so for 9 more episodes, 8 more following this one, I want to break down The Republic by Plato, dog. Starting today with book 2, okay? And what book 2 of The Republic is concerned with essentially is the nature of justice. And it starts to us, it's, introduced to us by what is known as Glaucon's argument. Glaucon is one of the characters in The Republic. And Glaucon is insisting that we're only just because we fear the consequences of being unjust, right? And that if we had the opportunity, Glaucon tries to tell us, that we would act unjustly if we knew that there's no fear of punishment at all whatsoever, okay? This is an example that's known as the Ring of Gyges. And I don't know if that's how you pronounce it. I really don't care either, right? But the basic idea is it's like Lord of the Rings shit, you know what I mean? You put this ring on and it makes you invisible. And what the Ring of Gyges is asking us is, if you had that opportunity, would you behave justly, right? And that will give you an answer as to what your response is to this thought experiment, this argument that Glaucon is introducing. And the idea is that if you would act unjustly because you're invisible and wouldn't get caught, then chances are you're probably not as good a person as you think you are. You know what I'm saying? And this sets the stage for the discussion on justice in general, which is a huge prominent theme throughout the entire book. Okay. So this dude Glaucon tells us this, to which Socrates responds by giving his own position. And that is that, in order to even examine justice effectively, you first have to imagine what Socrates claims to be an ideal city. And again, this is why I mentioned the ancestors, you know what I mean? Yeah, we knew that, right? Anyways, Socrates believes, okay, that understanding justice on a larger scale, or rather on a smaller scale, will help at the individual scale, will help illuminate our understanding of justice at a larger scale. And in order to highlight how this works, he divides it into a tripartite, right? Specifically like a division of labor in terms of the city, but then the division of the soul in terms of the individual, okay? And what he's telling us is that in terms of the city, it's comprised of 3 classes, okay? The first of which being the ruling class, the second of which being the guardians or the warrior class, and then the third being the producers, right? And he tells us that each class, it performs its roles, okay? And that within the classes, individuals themselves also have their own function that contributes to justice, right? So ultimately, for now at least, what he's trying to tell us is that justice is it is a harmonious relationship between the 3 classes, okay? And the 3 classes, again, being the rulers, the philosopher kings, individuals who possess wisdom, and he tells us are best suited to govern. The warrior class, the guardians, who protect the city and uphold its laws, right? And who embody courage, most importantly. And then by the producers, who are, artisans, farmers, and so on, who are responsible for the economy and for providing for the community. And, they're supposed to reflect moderation, okay? And at this point is where they start to introduce the distinction between education and virtue. And Socrates emphasizes that, the education of the guardians of the warrior class, it's crucial, bro. It's crucial that they be educated. And that they must be educated not just in, intellectual pursuits like music and poetry and philosophy, but in physical skills as well, dog, in order to develop their character and ensure that they embody the virtues that are necessary for leadership. Again, this is all shit our ancestors talked about, you know what I mean? There's nothing special about what Socrates is saying, but definitely very different from what it is that we have now, you know what I'm saying? And he tells us that, moreover, we need to cultivate within the city certain virtues, the virtues of wisdom, courage, moderation, and justice. They must be, they must be valued, and they must be present within the city in order to ensure that the structure of its city itself is one in which the peoples are able to achieve harmony, or the city is able to achieve harmony, right? And the only way this is possible, of course, is if each class fulfills its role without overstepping its boundaries, ensuring a balanced society. One thing that the ancient Greek philosophers often get a lot of shit for is being a classist society. But when you contextualize it this way, classes here meaning that they believe that they were superior to other people, with the philosopher kings at the very top, right? But when you situate it this way, all they're basically saying is that if you don't have if you have a classless society, then it's going to be too much chaos running around. It's not going to enable people to live a just life, right? Which is, well, eventually we're going to start talking about as I continue to unfold this book, where we ask ourselves questions, because they're going to tell you. They're going to tell you. You got to tell the people of citizenry a noble lie. And the noble lie here is the myth of universality. Like, we're all one peoples with one story under one umbrella, regardless of our seemingly different nature, right? So for America, it'd be, we're all Americans, we're all Christians, we're all etc., right? And what they're saying is you have to tell that to people, because if you don't, then the society is going to rip itself apart from the inside, right? Which obviously people like myself would be a clear example of that, because we're coming along, these damn pesky postmodernists, to use the language of Jordan Peterson, and saying, actually, no, we're not Americans, and no, we don't value their same principles, etc., right? You can decide what side of the camp you are for me, right? For yourself personally. For me, you already know, okay? But regardless, still understand and perhaps in many ways agree with what it is that's being said. Anyways, I agree. It would just be nice if it was actually more evenly applied in a more humanistic way that actually didn't fucking rest on, the merciless fucking... You know what? I don't agree. It's not that I don't agree. Okay, I do agree. It's just, it's the way that it's currently applied right now, perhaps, I guess I could say in the best way possible, that I don't agree with. Why? Because it gives rise to shit like white supremacy, which obviously I don't fucking agree with. You know what I'm saying? Anyways, we'll talk about that in further detail when the time comes. For now, we gotta crawl before we ball, baby. We gotta continue to lay the foundation, okay? That's as far as the city's concerned, okay? As far as the individual is concerned, we're still looking for justice ourselves, okay? And again, it comes by way of the tripartite, right? Because Socrates draws the parallel between the structure of the city and the individual soul. So just as the city requires harmony among its classes, he's going to tell us that individuals ourselves, we require balancing of the rational, the spirited, and the appetitive parts of our souls, okay? Now, in philosophy, this is what is known essentially as a social construct, social contract view, okay? Glaucon's perspective, which aligns with the idea of that individuals agree to act justly to avoid the chaos of injustice. So I'm going to act right and you're going to act right, not because we're good people, but because we both understand that if either one of us are tripping, then we won't have the ability to live a good life. So it's not that I don't want to act right. It's that I'm putting my desire to live a good life over my desire to act a fool. You know what I'm saying? And that you're agreeing to do the same so that we can have a just society that enables us to live a good life. That's basically the social contract idea that's being introduced here. Okay. And that Glaucon's going to tell us that if we're given this opportunity, even the most just person, he tells us, might act unjustly if, again, we could do so without consequence. Which, brings up really important questions about the nature of just versus unjustness, dog. And the basic idea here being is that an unjust man, someone who acts just out of self-interest and is able to manipulate perceptions of other people's, they probably would ultimately be better off than the just man who is bound by morality. And this is like a really big problem, because it gets like a big problem in philosophy in general between, the sophists and the philosophers, where sophists are going to want to come along and state that truth is whatever I, can get you to believe. Whereas the philosophers in this sense are going to be like, no, there is only one absolute truth and you have to learn how to get there by the ways we've established, right? Again, who you think is right is up to you to believe. I'll tell you, I think they're both wrong, right? I think the ancient Greek tradition in general, the West tradition of philosophy as a whole, completely wrong, right? Not because it's unimportant and not because they haven't come up with, their own grand insights, but because for me personally and the Nahuatl tradition, it's just a complete different, we're just concerned with other shit. That's what I'm trying to state, right? Different start points, different end points, okay? Not to say that we're in the Nahuatl tradition not concerned with knowledge, nature, science, etc. Just how we utilize that knowledge. Again, going back to the very beginning of the podcast, like what is the point of utilizing this knowledge? For the ancient Greeks, it's to build a cult of personality. Like, oh, look at this wise man, Socrates, who knew all the right answers. For the Nahuatl, like, that's cool, man, but what are you doing for the community? How are you using that knowledge to uplift the community, right? Going back to what we talked about at the beginning of the podcast. Anyways, in response to this, Socrates tells us that he responds by proposing that to understand justice, again, you gotta construct a city from scratch, bro. And that, again, you gotta do so in a way that will enable you to reveal the nature of justice. So again, you have this tripartite structure of the three classes, okay? Which has its psychological parallel in the tripartite soul, right? Where you have the rational part, which is the rulers, that seeks knowledge and truth. And you have the spirited part, which, is the warrior part of our soul that embodies emotions like courage and honor. And then you have, again, the appetitive part, which corresponds to the producers and represents our basic needs and pleasures, okay? And what Socrates is telling us is that depending on which one you're driven by, is gonna very greatly impact the quality of life that you're living, and in turn the quality of life that the city has. Because if everybody's driven by their appetite of nature, where they're just looking to satisfy their basic needs and base level animalistic pleasures, it's probably not going to be the best society, right? Kind of like the one that we have now with the Coomers and all that kind of shit. Anyways. As far as Socrates is concerned, what this is going to tell us is that this city, on top of being driven by these three, tripartite, it needs to be guided by four cardinal virtues. The first of which being wisdom, again, found in the rulers who possess knowledge of the good and the just. The second of which being courage, that is found in the guardians who uphold the city's laws, right, and values even in adversity. The third is moderation, that reflects the harmony between the classes, okay, as they all agree that rulers should lead. And then the fourth being justice, which represents each class performing its role effectively and not overstepping its boundaries. Know your role, trash. Basically, right? Anyways, education figures prominently in this, bro, okay? This is why, again, I used to think it was corny as fuck that I would care so deeply about education. Like, goddamn, bro. Why couldn't I have been like an options trader motherfucker that goes out there and just fucking makes millions of dollars at the expense of other people? Why'd I gotta get the fucking education? That's the role that I was cast. You know what I mean? But now I'm like perfectly content with that. Like, education's important, bro. It might sound like some nerd shit, but I truly do value education. It's fucking important, bro. And I'm not alone. People historically have understood the importance of education and conversely the dangers of miseducation, right? This philosophy was no different, okay? For Socrates and company, they're going to emphasize that guardians, the warriors, they must receive a rigorous education, bro, that shapes their character and their understanding of justice. How are you going to defend some shit you don't even understand, let alone believe it? You know what I'm saying? And again, this training includes not just philosophical education, but a physical training, bro, that is aimed specifically to cultivate wisdom and virtue, right? They're going to want to tell us that they should regulate. This is the part that I was telling you earlier that we'll talk about in the coming days, right? They need to regulate the stories and the myths that are told to the guardians in order to ensure that they promote virtuous behavior and that they discourage vice. This is all a part of shaping their moral character and their worldview. And it's going to be of key importance throughout the book as we, progress through it as this podcast unfolds, okay? But for now, I'll just end it with the implication of justice, which again, we're told is like harmony, essentially. And that it's argued that justice is a form of harmony for both the city and in the soul. And that just as a well-ordered city thrives, a well-ordered individual leads a fulfilling life, through this balance. And yeah, that's about as good as time as any to wrap this first podcast back in a couple of months. I hope you all enjoyed it. And if not, I will definitely try better to be more illuminated with my tech thoughts in the next one. Until then, I hope you all have a great rest of your day, and I'll see you next time. Peace.